Nunga Mi Incorporated acknowledges that the land in which this podcast is recorded on is the traditional land of the Kaurna people. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the living Kaurna people today. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are warned that the following podcast may contain names and voices of people that are now deceased. Welcome to the Nunga Mi podcast. I'm your host, Clinton Bennell. I'm a Nunga and Wiradjuri man, and I'm also the Men's Wellbeing Coordinator for Nunga Mi. This podcast is designed to provide information to our communities with a focus on family and domestic violence. So episode 1 is going to focus on our service, Nunga Mi, and today we have Olive Bennell, who is the CEO of Nunga Mi and is going to talk about the organisation. Welcome, Olive.
Thank you. This is a great opportunity to highlight an amazing service that I have the privilege to be working in.
So before we jump into the actual service, I think it's important to kind of set the scene, who you are and where you're from, who's your mob.
So I'm Olive Bennell. I'm a Wiradjuri woman from the central area of New South Wales, but I have had the privilege to be living, working and learning on Kaurna land in both government, the not-for-profit sector and now in an Aboriginal community-controlled organisation.
Great. Olive, can you share a little bit more information about what Nunga Mi is?
I have the privilege of being the CEO of Nunga Mi. It's a 40-year-old, well, over 40-year-old organisation that was originally established by some very strong Aboriginal women within the community advocating for shelter and support for women and children. And we are part of an alliance funded by the South Australian Government with other service providers within the domestic and family violence service. We have a platform of actually providing crisis support for women and children, which has now evolved to a place where we provide much more of a holistic service response to families that are experiencing or at risk of experiencing domestic violence, which is very different. We have a new service model and I'd really like to talk a little bit more about that. Predominantly, we have engaged only women and children in the past. We've now been fortunate to receive some additional funding to look at prevention modelling and to look at much more holistic support to the family unit. We have two elements that are really important for us now. One is a community education program and a community development focus around dispelling the myth that violence in the community is an acceptable norm. These two positions are really important because sometimes our people actually don't understand that they are in a family or domestic violence situation until there's an engagement and a yarn that happens with our staff. So I'm really impressed about the fact that we can now promote our service supports to the community. We also have a very new program that we're doing in partnership with KWI. It's called Kamunka, and Kamunka really is about holistic responses for the family. And what I mean by that is too often we engage with part of the family and deliver a service response, but this program is focused around holistic service delivery on the platform of social and emotional wellbeing. So we look at the whole family and the kinship structure and the support that we can provide to that family within the community around what they identify their needs are. And that's really important because too often the service system that we operate in identifies what the issue is for a family and then try to deliver what they think is appropriate. And ultimately, most times we fail in that process because we're not listening to what the family wants. This program is really about, and this is a horrible word, but co-design is really important for us to be sitting down with family and actually designing what it is they need in their support.
I think a better word to use in that process is potentially co-creating. And
Yeah.
I think from my experience, watching and observing, the process of engaging with our families is really around, well, what is it that we can do to support you, rather than, historically services have the approach of, this is what we can do for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, even in our own response, we are really trying to make sure that whatever the family needs are and what they identify as their needs, we respond to not just around our own service supports, but how we can bring in the additional service supports that they need, because everybody needs different things and they're in a different place in their walk, in their life. And it's up to us to be able to support that, not dictate it. That's critical.
Mm. And Olive, I guess with 40 years of service delivery, I mean, you would experience or have a lot of insight in terms of what are the gaps in a mainstream service for Aboriginal families who are experiencing family and domestic violence. I Can you talk to me about the model in terms of, why is this family approach so important?
Yeah, look, as I said, we're a 40-year organisation and we've evolved around seeing what is happening in our communities with our families, and that violence has become an acceptable norm in the community, and we want to move out of what I call a crisis response into a more preventative and supportive response through the whole family network, rather than focusing just on women and children. And don't get me wrong, that's been a real priority for us, but it only addresses part of the trauma response that our community is actively in at this point in time. Mainstream services are very targeted around women and children, and so they should be. But we actually need to be more culturally responsive in terms of healing our families and our communities, and you can't do that with just one element of the family getting support. That's been something that we're clear about, and so our model is really about moving through that crisis response to an intervention response, and then to support the family in whatever element of their walk in their life is needed for them in healing the family unit and healing the community. Too often, we only offer part of the solution, and I'm excited that our service model is actually looking to provide support for the whole of the solution in terms of the trauma that our families and our extended families and communities are currently experiencing.
That's great. And I think one thing that really echoes in what you've been talking about is the concept of healing. Why do you think that is such an important element to add into our service?
I think the importance of the healing platform is the fact that we haven't had the opportunity to do that in the past. We've really had people in the crisis element focused around homelessness, not focused around what the family actually needs to heal from intergenerational trauma. We're working with families that have been disengaged from the service system because it's just hard for them to manoeuvre. The supports are out there, but if you don't know how to access them and how to get support, then you actually don't achieve what you need to achieve in your walk in your life. So we're not about telling people what they need, which has been the old adage in Aboriginal affairs, where people are told that this is the service they need. We're actually here to support the service that the family identify that they need, and to support them to manoeuvre the system to enable them to achieve their goals, not to achieve our goals or the KPIs that we are required to meet. I'm not saying we don't meet them. We do meet them, but we do our service in a very different element because we put the customer first, the customer, the client, whichever you prefer, but they are put first and they decide what it is that they need as their immediate response.
And with that approach, and if we look forward to the future with this service model and the desired outcomes we are pursuing, what do you think the impact of that will be on the community?
I think we'll end up with a stronger, healthier community that knows what it wants and knows how to achieve what it wants, rather than us dictating what the system will give them. I think one of the really exciting things that's happened in Nunga Mi is that for the first time, we actually have men's support workers. We've never had men working in our organisation, and without that support, you're not doing a holistic family support service. So I'm really excited that we actually now have within our organisation male support for our families where they request that they want it. And it's clear to me that that's something that families do want because they're accessing the service.
Thanks, Olive. Thank you so much for your time and sharing all of your information on Nunga Mi. Just before we wrap up, do you have any other things you want to share or any sort of insights about Nunga Mi?
Yeah, look, it's been a great opportunity to share the wonderful work that my staff and board are achieving with families within our community. But one of the things, I guess, that I think is really critical in this process of providing more holistic service to our families is the fact that we are so keen and excited to be able to be entering into partnerships with organisations that can further support and enhance the service that we deliver to our clients. So I look forward to engaging more with partners going forward and providing much more holistic service responses to our families and communities in the future.
If you're wanting more information about Nunga Mi or want to stay up to date with the work that we're doing, please follow our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn.